laced with insults, personal insults for that matter, which I think is really not warranted and called for. Because this is a house which our people take very seriously, where we should engage in a very serious manner on national issues. We take all these contributions, as I said, seriously because in the end they enrich our national discourse, our debate, and they will strengthen our response to the challenges our country faces. 11 months ago, when we declared a national state of disaster in response to the coronavirus pandemic, I said to the people of South Africa that we shall overcome. I said we shall overcome. I said, like I did say last week, that we will rise, and indeed we will rise. This is inevitable because of the strength and the resilience of the people of this country. Yesterday, this great and hopeful nation, devastated by a deadly pandemic, lifted its head, straightened its back, and welcomed a new era in our fight against the pandemic. Less than 24 hours after the shipment landed of the virus, the first COVID-19 vaccine, the first COVID-19 vaccine was administered in our country. Our vaccination program, which is our best defense against this pandemic, has begun. This has happened not in a month, not in 2 months, but now, in the middle of February, just as we said it would. And this process is starting in a number of countries. Some started earlier than us, some are starting at the same time as us, and some are yet to start. So this is a process that is lifting many boats at the same time. Many said that we have neither the ability nor the will to protect lives, and yet here we are on the threshold of a new era in our fight against the pandemic. This pandemic has almost become our enemy number one, but we have a number of other tasks that we have to address. And so, before we get to the business of today, before we turn to our plans and to the immense work that lies ahead, let us give the courageous South African people the dues that they richly deserve. There are health workers and others on the front line in our country, and these are the South Africans who deserve to be recognized. And these are South Africans like Zoliswa Gidi Josi, a nurse from Cape Town, who yesterday became the first person in South Africa to be vaccinated. She, like many others, have been in the front line, willing to even sacrifice their own lives so that all of us could live. But there are many others, millions of our citizens, who, despite the difficulties this pandemic has imposed on them, never lost faith. They never lost faith in their country or in the commitment of this government to serve and protect the people of South Africa. And this government has protected the people of South Africa, whether we like it or not. I speak of the families saved from destitution, saved from hunger, the businesses saved from closure, and the workers who were supported so that they could still earn and feed their families. I speak of our social partners in business, in labor, and in civil society, who stood by the people of South Africa. We have led and will continue to lead this country through the worst crisis of the democratic era. We have done right by the people of South Africa. It is much easier to say in hindsight what should have been done differently. To quote Homer, even a fool may be wise after the event. Much of what we have heard from the opposition benches over the last 2 days was little more of name-calling and mudslinging. But all I can say to all the members of this House that we will overcome, we will find it in ourselves to work together to overcome this pandemic. We will rebuild our economy in a manner that is more inclusive, that creates jobs, and that lifts people out of poverty. We will put an end to corruption. We will keep our streets safe and build a state that can effectively serve the people of South Africa. Now, we are undertaking these critical actions at a time of great challenge and great difficulty. Several speakers in this debate have emphasized the reality that we are still in the midst of the most severe global health emergency in more than a century. They have spoken about the devastating effect that this pandemic has had on our economy, on our society, and our people's livelihoods. That is why the vaccination program that has now gotten underway remains our immediate priority, starting with healthcare workers and then expanding further to reach population immunity in the shortest possible time. It is why we continue to implement relief measures such as the special COVID-19 grant and the UIF TERS scheme to provide support to those who need it. And there are many people who need the support, but with our limited resources, we can only reach those that we can. It is why we are forging ahead with economic reforms through the various programs that we've put in place. And a lot of progress has already been made, concrete progress in accelerating the implementation and shifting of our economic trajectory. And this is where I would agree with those who say the glass is not empty. We should see it as having been half full and getting fuller and fuller as we move on. As we undertake the demanding task to recover from this crisis, there is much about our country from which we can draw strength, hope, as well as encouragement. Sometimes we forget about what we have on the asset side of our balance sheet. We forget about the many endowments that we have as a nation and as a country. We focus and spend a lot of energy on the negatives. And yet if we step back and look at what it is that we have as our strength, and we've got many strengths, and these are strengths that we should find time to capitalize on, to strengthen where we are capable, rather than to break down even those strengths, and we end up with nothing. So we have a number of endowments as a nation. Some of the speakers spoke about some of these strengths, particularly our ministers, our deputy ministers, and members of our parliament as well, including from the provincial legislature side, our premiers, our MECs, as well as our SALGA representatives. And as I said, as a nation, we have many capabilities. We have many strengths and attributes that we can and must draw on as we build and transform our society. Our people are our greatest strength. It is their grit, their determination, and sense of solidarity that has enabled us to endure this pandemic. It is due to their actions that this pandemic has not taken an even greater toll, that we are now able to work towards a recovery, that we are able to contemplate a time when we will have overcome this disease. This pandemic has not only revealed so much about our character as a people, but it has also revealed the depth and diversity of expertise in our country. It has demonstrated the world-leading capabilities of our scientists, of our research institutions, of our universities, of various agencies and public entities, but it has also revealed the strength of some of our companies and a number of our own citizens at an individual level, at community level, at family level. As mentioned in this debate, South African scientists and engineers and manufacturers were able to design and produce personal protective equipment and thousands of medical ventilators within a matter of months to respond to a desperate need. A number of our producers for PPEs were even able to start selling on the platform that we set up at the African Union, and they sold to a number of countries on our continent. And this was born out of the capabilities that we have, the inventiveness that we have, and the innovation that resides in this country. These are things that we need to highlight and to be proud of on the asset side of our balance sheet. Scientists from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, working with other laboratories, were at the forefront of the genomic surveillance work that has led to the identification of COVID-19 variants. Several South African scientists and researchers at a number of world-class institutions have been involved in the management of various vaccine trials in our country. BioVac, a partnership between government and the private sector, is using the vaccine storage and distribution infrastructure and capabilities to assist with the distribution of COVID-19 vaccine to different vaccination centers that have been set up in our country. And people have been saying, because they're doubting Thomases, they have been saying, Are we going to be able to distribute and administer these vaccines? Because they only look on the negative side of our balance sheet. They must also look on the positive side of our balance sheet and know that we've got institutions such as BioVac who are now rolling out these vaccines, and who will make sure that they are rolled out in the most efficient way. Yesterday, when I went to Khayelitsha Hospital, it was like clockwork. The health workers have been well trained. The same at Steve Biko in Gauteng. Health workers have been trained, they are prepared, they are ready to administer this vaccine. And we've been hearing doomsday stories that there's going to be chaos and collapse and everything else. Pause for a moment, South Africans, and look at our capabilities. Now, these capabilities did not come by chance. They've been developed over many years. Yes, there have been mistakes. We've stumbled, we've risen up. But the important thing is to realize that we've been trying. We've been the people in the arena, fighting and working and making sure that we improve the lives of South Africans. And that is what is important. So over many years, but they've also been developed through working together with development partners, both locally and internationally. And the recognition that is given to some of our scientists internationally and the respect is just mind-boggling. We are an important player also on the global stage when it comes to things like innovation, science, and many other endeavors. Taken together, our national science and innovation system is a hugely valuable resource that we need to further, and we need to nurture, and we need to develop. We must support the commercialization of the products that come from this innovative fervor that we have seen coming through during the COVID period. It must lead to creating factories and manufacturing, as well as creating jobs. I've asked the Minister of Higher Education and Innovation to put together a team of scientists to begin the process of developing our own vaccines so that we can deal with this pandemic and future ones. We now live in an era where pandemics may become more frequent in our lives, and we must therefore be resilient in relation to diagnostics, therapeutics, as well as vaccines. We must develop the scientific capability that our country has demonstrated to prepare for the future. Yes, we must use our own indigenous knowledge systems when it comes to therapeutics. Yes, even developing our own vaccines. We must use the knowledge that resides here on the African continent. It is very important. It is for that reason that I've directed Minister Nzimande to get on with the process, and I want to meet those scientists and say, this is now urgent. It is urgent that we develop our own capability and not be running around the world, scouring the whole globe looking for vaccines. We must develop them here and now. The success of our economy starts with the investment we need to make in our people, and especially our young people. South Africa is a young nation with a youthful population. Too many young people are disillusioned, they are frustrated, and unsure of where to go for support. But our young people are also resilient. In just under a week's time, the matric results for 2020 will be released. This is a most remarkable group of learners who were determined to learn and to study under the most difficult conditions. They must be commended for their perseverance and for their steadfast commitment to achieving their ambitions. As a country, we have identified youth employment and development as one of our most important priorities, not only because the high rate of unemployment is unacceptable, but also because we need young people to grow our economy. We need to harness the energy of these young people, the skill base that they have, and develop their skills, but we also need to harness their dynamism to meet the challenges of the present as well as for the future. That is why we are providing young people with pathways from learning to earning. We are mapping the services available to young people in every community to identify gaps and target our intervention to the areas of greatest need. We are expanding the funding availability for digital and technology skills and in global business services through an innovative model that links payment for skills training to employment outcomes. The Youth Employment Service that we launched in 2018 has created over 50,000 work experiences and generated over 2.8 billion rand in new salaries for the young people that have gone through the program. The Employment Tax Incentive Support Scheme supported well over 1.5 million jobs for young people in the 2019 and 2020 financial year. This is a phenomenal progress that has been recorded in relation to employment tax incentive. The foundation for all these efforts is laid in the early years of a young person's life. This is why maternal health, child nutrition, and early childhood development are vital for the transformational process that government is involved in. That is why we are still focusing on the provision of antiretroviral therapy and working towards the elimination of mother-to-child transmission of HIV. It is why, for example, one of the programs under the Presidential Employment Stimulus is to provide financial support to over 100,000 early childhood development practitioners to enable them to reopen or keep open their early childhood facilities. It is also why the COVID-19 social relief measures that we implemented are so important. It is that support that is necessary at the social level that has helped our people get through this pandemic. The temporary increases in payments to social grant recipients and the special COVID-19 grant provided significant support to poor households at a critical time. The economy is already showing signs of a strong recovery that is on the horizon. Just yesterday, we received new results from the third wave of the NIDS-CRAM survey, which is a collaboration among several South African universities. This is a very representative study at a national level, which has been tracking the impact on households of the pandemic since the beginning of this pandemic. This data shows that by October last year, total employment had recovered to almost reach the level that we saw in February, just before the pandemic. So this, in a number of ways, is progress. While we await the release of new data from Stats SA, these findings are a remarkable early signal of a robust and resilient labor market recovery. This recovery in employment is the result of both the phased reopening of the economy as we brought the virus under control, as well as the success of relief measures such as the UIF TERS that were implemented as part of our emergency stimulus package. It is these green shoots that we must now continue to nurture as we steer the economy towards a full recovery and further growth. However, there are several areas of concern that the study also found out or reported on. The same survey found a high degree of turnover in the labor market, which means that those who lost their jobs in April are not necessarily those who gained jobs in October. Women are working fewer hours, and their employment levels have not recovered as robustly as the employment levels of men. This may be due to, at least in part, to the disproportionately more time that women spend on childcare than men. The data also suggests that while the expansion of social grants provided substantial relief to individuals and households last year, hunger has once again risen to higher levels than before. This is deeply worrying and concerning. It is evidence of an uneven recovery which risks leaving the most vulnerable behind. It also demonstrates the need to maintain some of the extraordinary relief measures that we put in place and to accelerate our livelihoods, supports, and employment programs. It also highlights the need to move with the greatest speed to restore our most effective social support programs to full operation, such as the school feeding schemes. Research like this has helped to inform our response to the pandemic from the beginning and will continue to inform the choices that we have to make as we guide our economy towards recovery. More broadly, our experience of the impact of the pandemic has shown the importance of the economic empowerment of women. By improving the economic position of the women of our country, we can reduce inequality, the levels of child hunger, and we can also reduce poverty. It is when we empower the women of our country that we will be able to deal a real blow against poverty and inequality. We can reduce the vulnerability of women also to violence and abuse. And we will be harnessing the talents and energies of 50% of our population more effectively to drive growth and transformation. As government, we are working to give effect to our decision to direct at least 40% of public procurement to women-led and women-owned businesses. This is important if we seek to reduce poverty and inequality. This requires not simply a change to procurement policies. It also requires that we prepare women-owned businesses to access these opportunities. Therefore, working with the private sector, state entities, and development partners, we have started with the training process of women entrepreneurs in financial literacy, accessing markets, and access to finance as well. As several speakers have indicated, the economic empowerment of women is being supported across government, from small-scale farmers to cooperatives, from human settlements to tourism and to mining. The pandemic has sharply demonstrated just how much economic growth and social development depend on the nation's health. It has shown how vital it is that we should invest in our people's health if we are to sustainably grow our economy and realize the potential of this, our most significant endowment, the people of South Africa. The pandemic has also exposed the inequalities in access to healthcare and underscored the value of a national health insurance, the NHI. While the pandemic has further constrained our public finances, in many ways it has also enabled progress towards realizing the NHI and making it effective. The COVID-19 pandemic has shown us how to work together to harness the entire capability of all public and private providers in the health space for service provision. The other area, honorable members, where South Africa is richly endowed is our natural resources. The fynbos that I spoke about last week is part of a remarkable biodiversity that is matched in few other places on earth. We have a great responsibility to conserve this diversity of fauna and flora, but also boundless opportunities to use this ancient resource for sustainable growth and development. Now, using our indigenous knowledge to produce things like cosmetics and pharmaceutical products, to develop our ecotourism, we are creating new businesses and new jobs while making a priceless investment in sustainability. Now, our country is a country of great agricultural promise as well. We are a producer and exporter of a wide variety of agricultural products. Our agricultural products are sought in many parts of the world. The investment we are making in agriculture and agro-processing will enable us to fully realize the potential of this great renewable resource. But to be successful, we need to align agricultural development with an effective and accelerated land redistribution program. It is when people have land that we will be able to realize this great dream that we have. We should not, as some honorable members do, see a trade-off between land reform and agricultural output. The two must be complementary and they must be mutually reinforcing. And we must use our own experience, not seek to import experiences from elsewhere. We must use our own lived experience here in South Africa to resolve the land question. Providing more land to many South Africans along with the means to productively work the land, is not only about correcting a past wrong, it is also about building a prosperous and a more inclusive future. A future that includes everyone and not only some, as has happened so many times in our past. The wealth that lies beneath our soil has been central to our country's economy for nearly 150 years. However, this wealth has not been equally shared amongst the people of South Africa. It's only been shared by some, and it's also only being shared by some who are not even in South Africa but elsewhere. However, this wealth belongs to the people of South Africa. We have extensive reserves of some of the most valuable minerals and extensive mining expertise in South Africa. Mining was one of the sectors of our economy that recovered significantly following the easing of domestic and global lockdown restrictions. We are working with the industry to promote renewed investment through a conducive policy and regulatory framework. This includes efforts to reduce current timeframes for mining, prospecting, water and environmental licenses. Yes, investors have complained that it takes far too long for them to get their permits and their licenses. And I've said to colleagues that we now need to inject greater urgency to all this. To encourage the expansion of the industry, the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy has drafted an exploration program implementation plan. South Africa's natural beauty, its long coastline, its developed infrastructure, and its rich cultural diversity have made it a destination of choice for travelers from various parts of the world. Much as we are a distant destination for some parts of the world, it has still succeeded in being a choice destination. We are mindful that for our international tourism arrival numbers to reach pre-COVID periods, or levels rather, the vaccine rollout and adoption of biosecurity standards remains critical. The e-visa regime that we've sought to implement remains one of the key enablers for tourism recovery in our country. Domestic tourism remains the pillar of the recovery of the sector, and we are encouraged by collaborative efforts by all stakeholders to grow this market, this domestic market, in an effort to save businesses and jobs in the tourism sector. Now, tourism has been a resilient sector over decades, and even during the pandemic, with the work that we are doing now, we are confident that the sector will survive, it will revive, and it will grow again. Among our most valuable natural resources, as we build a new economy, are also the most plentiful: the sun and the wind. That is why our Integrated Resource Plan 2019 envisages a substantial increase in the contribution that renewable energy makes to our country's energy supply. It is why Eskom is expanding and strengthening the transmission grid to facilitate the connection of renewable energy by participating itself in the building of renewable energy generation capacity. Now, those who've been saying Eskom must enter this market, Eskom is in the process of doing precisely that. It has the depth of knowledge, it has the depth of capability, and we would like it to play in that market. Apart from reducing the country's carbon emissions and ensuring substantial water savings, our renewable energy program presents great opportunity to boost local manufacturing and job creation. Another of our natural endowments is our location and our geography. We are exploiting this through our special economic zones, using them to strengthen our industrialization drive and bring development to local areas. Now, if you look at how other economies that have now become big economies have grown, they started industrializing their economies through special economic zones. Now, our own Kucha SEZ now has a mature portfolio with one large anchor investor, and the Tshwane Auto SEZ has a major company driving the localization of components in the area. The Durban Trade Port is located at a key logistics hub that is well positioned to decrease the time taken to deliver a product to global markets. Using learnings from our own Kucha SEZ, and as I prefer to call it Ngucha, the Kucha Development Corporation is providing advisory services to governments and to development agencies in a number of countries on our continent. The project opportunities have been identified in Cameroon, in Nigeria, and Zimbabwe. Now we have developed this homegrown capability by one of our agencies, which is government-owned. Another of our strengths as a country is our position in the global community and also on our continent. We are a country that is at peace with ourselves, but we are also at peace with the rest of the world. Over the past year, South Africa has been hard at work towards promotion of the African agenda during its chairship of the African Union. We've worked with a number of member states to develop a comprehensive and coordinated response to COVID-19, with a view to promoting the economic empowerment also of women and to silence the guns. We have made enormous contributions in our international work. We used our position as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council to strengthen the ties between the United Nations and the African Union bodies, particularly in the areas of peacekeeping and conflict resolution. We are a sought-after partner at the international level, as various players in the world seek to address a number of challenges and problems. They always seek us out. A number of our own citizens are already being placed in a number of places in world bodies and in continental bodies. The sustainability of our economic growth and development depends to a great extent on the development of the entire Southern African region. This is gaining increasing importance and is presenting greater opportunities now that the African Continental Free Trade Area is in operation. We're working with other countries in our region to consolidate peace also in countries that are facing challenges such as Mozambique and the DRC and others. And we have worked very hard in South Sudan to ensure that peace is also installed. The Deputy President has been working with various partners in that part of the world. Our country, honorable members, is at its most promising when these great endowments are exploited and relied on as we combine to create something that is altogether new as well as innovative. For more than a decade, the government has been working with various partners, including the private sector and academia, to develop the hydrogen fuel cell and the lithium battery storage technologies. This work serves two important developmental objectives. It offers the possibility of a new renewable source of energy, while at the same time establishing new uses and new markets for the platinum group metals that are abundant in our country. Hydrogen and the fuel cell technologies, which use platinum, offer an alternative source of clean electricity, while hydrogen allows for energy to be stored and delivered in a usable form. Through this Hydrogen South Africa strategy, government and its partners have successfully deployed hydrogen fuel cells to provide electricity in some of our schools and to build hospitals established as part of the country's COVID-19 response. Now, after a decade of investment, we are now ready to move from research and development to manufacturing and commercialization. We are establishing a Platinum Valley as an industrial cluster which brings together various hydrogen applications in the country to form an integrated hydrogen ecosystem. This initiative will identify concrete project opportunities to kickstart hydrogen cell manufacturing in promising hubs. It will also facilitate the commercialization of homegrown intellectual property. It presents what I see as a great opportunity to build a local skills base and lead the country into a new era of energy generation and demand for its platinum group metals. Remembering, of course, that we are the biggest platinum producer in the world. Now, through this initiative, South African skills, technology, and expertise is being used to extract greater economic value in the form of new jobs, industrial development, and cleaner energy from a mineral that the country has in substantial quantities. We will develop measures that should be taken to ensure that innovators are supported in the local innovation and research as we move further with the production. And government will also be one of the uptakers. This is just one example of the boundless potential that exists in our country to build a new economy of the future. And this stands in our good stead on the balance sheet side on the positive asset side of our balance sheet. As several speakers in the debate noted, we do need to work with greater urgency and at greater scale to address the challenges that we face. That is why the State of the Nation address focus on progress and not promises. And those who extracted promises and promises and promises maybe read it otherwise. But we focus on the progress that we've been making. And discerning critics, when looking more closely at what we were reporting here, have been able to say, yes, progress is being made. There are green shoots. We never said that we are going to do everything all at one go. All of it, in terms of handling corruption, local government strengthening the capability of the state, these are processes that I've often said we all need to work together to achieve. Our country has been in a difficult situation for a number of years. And I've invited all of us that we should work together. There is just no other way. And yes, I do welcome some of the suggestions that were made, including from bills that people want to propose and what have you. That's fine. Let's put it all in the pot, and let's see how we can work together to build this South Africa. Now, we are making progress, and within only 4 months of the establishment in October last year of this center that we set up in Treasury and working together with the Presidency, Operation Vulindlela has worked very closely with and supported implementing departments to resolve obstacles to the implementation of crucial reforms. The raising of the licensing threshold for embedded generation, the opening of further bid windows for renewable energy, the reinstatement of the water quality monitoring system, the commencement of digital migration, and the process towards the allocation of the spectrum, and a whole number of others, including the focus on land, are all concrete demonstrations of the progress that is being made across government. During the State of the Nation address, I said that we would publish the revised critical list, skills list rather, for public comment within 1 week, and I'm pleased to announce that the list was gazetted this morning. So this is already happening. We have entered what I see as a new era of implementation, but implementation and action. And let me say, yes, the criticisms that have emanated from various role players have contributed to get us to be more focused, and the work that is also being done in government has enabled us to be much more focused in doing the work that needs to be done, but in doing it with speed and with urgency to follow through on our commitments. I have spoken this afternoon of some of this country's strengths and capabilities, of how we have nurtured them and how we should continue to develop them. Because all too often we overlook them. We just focus on the negative. All too often we find ourselves distracted by the political intrigues of the day. We are too often overcome by the unrelenting pressures of the moment, so that we fail to see the enormous potential that resides within this nation. And all we need to do at times is to sit back and smell the coffee and see that great things are possible in this land. And if we fail to see that potential, and if we fail to recognize our strengths, then we will fail to seize the opportunities that they present for building a better society. A week ago, I stood here. I was forthright about the severe challenges that we face as a nation and about the many crises that we must endure to overcome. I spoke about the pain and the sorrow and the hardship that so many South Africans have experienced and continue to experience. But I also spoke about our strength and resilience as a people. I spoke about the qualities that we share and the common purpose that binds us together as a nation. We share the same fears. We share the same anxieties about our future. We share the same hopes and desires. We all want to provide for our children, and we hope that they will enjoy better lives than we have had. We want safety, and we also want shelter. We all want work that is dignified and rewarding, and we also want good health to perform this work. Throughout the history of our nation and our country, there have been those who have tried to divide us, to tear us apart, to turn us against one another, and to drive us apart. But we have always had more in common than that which divides us. Most importantly, I spoke last week about the focused actions that we are taking together to recover from the devastation of this pandemic and to build a new economy and a new society and a new future. Now, as we conclude this debate on the state of the nation, let us resolve that whatever our differences, and we may have many, and indeed we have many, let us resolve that we will strive together to overcome this virus. Let us resolve that we will strive together to overcome poverty, to overcome inequality and unemployment. That we will strive together to end violence against women and children in our country. Let us also agree that we will work together to build a new, transformed, and sustainable economy. That we will never surrender to state capture, to corruption, to mismanagement and complacency or despair. That we will never be discouraged or despair as South Africans, because that is not part of our DNA. We are a resilient people. We are a strong nation, and we must rely on our strengths to get rid of our weaknesses. We must also resolve that we will place the South African child at the center of all the efforts that we make. And we must also resolve that we will get the work done. And I can assure you that after this debate, I'm much more invigorated, I'm much more empowered, and I will even work harder for the people of South Africa. And I would say, like the Fynbos after the fire, we will rise. I thank you.
Inspiring.
Thank you very much. We have now come to the end of the President's reply.
I just woke up.
I take this opportunity to thank the Honorable President on behalf of this Parliament and honorable members. That concludes the debate on the state of the nation and the business for the day. This joint sitting is adjourned.
Long live President Ramaphosa, long live!
Thank you,
Thank you, President.
Give this house some dignity.
Thank you, President Ramaphosa. Thank you.
Is it over? I've woken up.